Welcome to the PJ Hoop Podcast. I'm your host, PJ, and today we're going to do my spinoff episode called PJ and Friends. Today I got my guy Pleasant joining us today. So he's a fellow podcaster, so we're going to just come on here. We're going to talk about some NBA. We're going to probably review the NBA season slightly. We're going to give you guys teams that we really enjoyed watching, teams that somewhat have disappointed us, and then also we'll talk about things that we're excited about in the playoffs. Pleasant, do you want to tell the people about yourself and where they can find you?
Yeah, appreciate the shout out, man. So I cover college football, NBA, NFL content. You can find me at Pleasant on TikTok and YouTube. I've got multiple TikToks, but if you just search up Pleasant, you will find everything you need to on both outlets there. Very excited to talk about this NBA season because, in my opinion, I don't know how you feel about it, but I thought it was an absolute banger of a year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I felt like the NBA this year did not disappoint. Same with college basketball, too. I just feel like basketball as a whole is in a pretty good spot right now. There's always going to be things that we don't agree with, we don't like, but that's what all facets of life, right? So, I'm excited. And I just seen something today that said the NBA ended up reaching I think it was 120 million people throughout the year, or 170 or something. And the 2025-26 season was the highest viewership they've had in 24 years. So They're doing something right? No matter how people feel, they're doing something right. So I just, you got to commend them, right? Got to commend them for what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that the league has a lot of good new faces. Like, what you want at the end of every season is you want games 76 through 82 to matter. If you watched on Sunday, game 82 for almost every single matchup that you saw mattered in some shape, way, or form, whether it was for a playoff seed, whether it's for a lottery seed. And then on top of that, you have young faces in the league. SGA, Luka, Ant, Wemby. These are all bright spots to look at. The league is not only in a great place right now with the OGs about to retire LeBron, Curry, KD, but it's also got such a bright future, it's just awesome to be in this particular setting. I feel like we're in the late 80s of basketball right now, where you have, Magic, Bird on the end part, and Isaiah Thomas at the end part of their careers, and then you've got Michael Jordan, the Dream, coming up next, and it's gonna be awesome to watch.
Yeah, and kind of just to spin off of what you said there, on my pod, in my season preview episode on my podcast, I said that I believe that this season was going to be a transformational year for the NBA, transitioning from the 2010s, the 2020 players to the players that are supposed to carry us to the 2030s. So this kind of lines up with what I was saying earlier on my pod, because I seen the writing on the wall. And so it's going to be fun to watch, really, with NIL. I think NIL is something that will really affect the NBA. But I think we're not going to see the NIL's affection on the NBA and impact on the NBA until the 2030s. After that market kind of simmers down, because right now in NIL, you got players that are getting $7-8 million, and that's not sustainable. I think just right now we got a lot of billionaires just investing in it and seeing what they can get out of it, because at the end of the day, it's all about margins. So, yeah. But let's dive into some NBA playoffs. We're going to talk to you guys about things that we're kind of looking forward to / excited about in the playoffs. And then we'll give you teams throughout the NBA season that may have succeeded our expectations, and then teams that may have disappointed our expectations. We're going to just start off with the series that we talked about off camera. We'll start off talking about the Cavs and the Raptors. Do you want to just tell the people why you're excited for this series and what things you're looking forward to about it?
So I would love to talk about this series a ton, because the thing that is most exciting is probably the stakes at hand. There's a couple teams in this playoff group, both East and West, that have a lot of offseason implications on the line if they don't perform to as high of a caliber as people kind of expect. I think with the James Harden trade, there are a lot of expectations for this Cavs team, not only to, of course, win a first-round series, but probably get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Donovan Mitchell has yet to do that in his career, and I think he's one of the best playoff performers that we have in the league right now. So where I look at this Cavs versus Raptors matchup, the thing that excites me the most is the polarization of how the two teams play. The Raptors are a really strong first half team, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, out of all these playoff teams, statistically speaking, are one of the worst first half teams in NBA history. I actually broke this whole thing down on a YouTube video about how I don't know what goes on in that locker room at halftime, but Kenny Atkinson or somebody basically injects the whole team with something, and they come out in the second half and they're brilliant. The one thing that is going to be truly interesting on like a gameplay level is the Cavaliers really struggle to defend the three, specifically because Donovan Mitchell is a little undersized and James Harden, of course, never known to be a great defender. The Raptors are not a great three-point shooting team, but I think if they're going to try to win this series, they're going to have to shoot the three well. So I look at a guy who hasn't gotten a lot of shine with this Raptors team in Grady Dick, and I think he's got to be somebody that the Raptors lean on with the bench to step up, even though, of course, like I think he's buried on the depth chart. He's really like the only strong shooter that I can think of on this team that maybe doesn't play consistent minutes, but
yeah, I'll challenge you on that just briefly. They got one other shooter on that team, Jacoby Walter. Walter's a great shooter too.
Great shout.
And he might end up starting for them because don't they have an injury? Isn't Emmanuel quickly hurt?
I think he's day to day. I can actually check that real quick.
Okay, yeah, I think from my understanding, I don't know if he's going to play, but Jacoby Walter is somebody that is a prominent player off their bench. I think he shoots close to 40% from three, if not 40%. And and maybe you're somebody that can answer this for me. Why is Grady Dick buried on that bench? Why do you think that? Because last year he was somebody, Garner wasn't that efficient, but clearly shown promise, right? Like he was somebody that I had on my 6th man of the year ballot coming into this year, to be honest with you. So I was like stunned when I seen that they kind of buried him. Do you know the backstory about that?
I don't necessarily know like a locker room backstory, but I was having kind of a similar conversation you're familiar with Mac McClung? Yeah. So Mac McClung, has been with the G League MVP this year, right? He's averaging like 30 points a game in the G League. And I had a friend call me up and ask me, like, why isn't Mac McClung getting a shot in the league? And the three things that I said is, number one, he can score in the G League, but can you do the same thing against NBA level players? And the answer to that question with the short sample size that we have with Mac McClung is no, right? The second thing is if you can't score at that high of a level, well, then that means you have to make up for it on the defensive end. So with Grady Dick, the thing that I see is he is a very special shooter, but when he slumps as a three-point shooter, the question is what does he do good after that? And the answer to that question is not really a lot. And that's why I think the Raptors have kind of buried him on the bench. Now, there also could be, some locker room stuff to play, kind of like maybe not as bad, because I mean, Jaden Ivey's situation has gone really sour, but maybe something like that as well, where he's just not messing or meshing with his teammates, right? But I think maybe a combination of the two is why. That would be my educated guess, at least.
That'd be your educated guess. Okay, yeah. And then so I guess I'll say this about the series. The reason why I wrote it down for myself is I'm truly just interested to see if Toronto can lock down Cleveland, because Toronto's 5th in the NBA in defensive efficiency. Offensively, Toronto, obviously, we knew that coming into this year, these parts were going to look kind of funky for Toronto. Toronto, I think, is like middle of the pack in offense efficiency.
Yep.
But defensively, and we're known, they got the defensive personnel to guard a player like Mitchell and to disrupt a player like Harden. And then it's always talked about Cleveland, their toughness, and if they're able to play physical, and people always calling Evan Mobley soft. So that's where my mind's at. That's why I wrote it down as something that was interesting to me, is to see if that Toronto defense can cause enough havoc and frustration amongst Cleveland's offense to slow them down. That's why I wrote that down for me. But let's go to your next playoff excitement. What about, do you have any other ones that you want to highlight? Because I have a couple that I wrote down. So
how about you go with one and then I'll bounce back, because I have one more that I'm truly excited about in terms of like a chess match. And then there's one more that I'm excited about because I got to give love to the OGs.
Okay.
Think you know where I'm going with it.
Yeah, I think I do. So one of the I would say matchups that I'm looking forward to, and it's another, I'm gonna give you my other, probably a potential second rounder is what I got written down. I'm not gonna give you the other first rounder, but the second round is probably the most obvious, and that's Nikola Jokic potentially playing against Victor Wembanyama. To me, that that has kind of a making of potentially a passing of the torch in a sort potentially there. And just watching the games that they played this year have been historically fun to watch, exciting because they play different styles, brands of basketball. I like watching stars guarding each other. Like that's something that I just crave. I enjoy watching. It makes for exciting basketball. And it also gives us a chance to really like scale and understand like, okay, this player kind of makes this impact on the team. And then a kind of a quiet matchup within that game is the little young Stephon Castle guarding potentially Jamal Murray. That's going to be a fun matchup because we know playoff Murray ain't no joke. This would be Castle's first time in the playoffs. So that's going to be a fun series to watch, though. But I do think, I would say personally, I think Denver's would pull it out. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. But do you have any thoughts on that potential matchup?
I do. There are so many thoughts running through my head about this series. The first thing, there's three things that I want to watch for. I do think San Antonio, of course, is going to beat Portland in the first round. We just found that out last night that Portland is going to be the 7th seed. But secondarily, I think the matchup between Denver and Minnesota, to me, is probably a little more competitive than the matchup between Denver and the Spurs. I think people would probably classify me as a Spurs hater. I'm not a Spurs hater. It's just hard for me to see a team that has zero playoff experience. Like the guy that plays the most minutes with the most playoff experience is De'Aaron Fox. And he had a 7-game series with the Warriors, and that's it. When I look at the Spurs in round 2, because I think they will dispatch Portland and get to the second round, whoever they end up playing, Denver or Minnesota, Victor Wembanyama this year has been the best defensive player, honestly, maybe in NBA history. This might be one of the best defensive seasons ever. But what I've yet to see is him play high minutes in back-to-back games. I actually mentioned this on another pod a few weeks ago or a few days ago. He has not played 5 games in a row where he's played more than 35 minutes. That's crazy. And now he is only in year 3 and he's very young, but the number 2, or like the 2 biggest critiques about Wemby coming into the NBA was, can he be effective at his size, like with his frame being very light? I think the answer is yes, he can be effective. But the second thing is can he be durable? I don't know about it in a playoff series, and that's what I'm looking forward to. The second thing, in a Denver-San Antonio matchup, I go back to the Minnesota-Denver series 2 years ago. Jamal Murray kind of turned into a complete shell of himself when he had Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels basically guarding him the whole way down the court. And so that's what I think is going to happen with De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper, and Stephon Castle, like you mentioned. I want to see how he counteracts that. And then the last thing that I'm looking for in this Denver versus San Antonio series, San Antonio doesn't really have in their starting lineup, I always say with playoffs, the possessions get longer and more impactful. The minutes for starters get much larger. So you're not running a 10 deep bench. You've got 7 to 8 guys that you're playing a lot of minutes. So that means that the Spurs starting lineup with their 3 guards, Wemby, and then like a Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson thing, do they have anybody to match up against Aaron Gordon? Which I know Aaron Gordon is not like a huge threat, but he played unbelievable minutes for the Nuggets last year in the playoffs. He's done a great job in the limited time that he's seen this season.
Literally, this to me, and I said this on my pod earlier in the year before all their injuries happened, I felt like this was the best Denver team Nikola Jokic has had around him. When we're talking about size, power, scoring, defensive versatility for them, and also San Antonio, they can't shoot threes. San Antonio's I think like 14th, maybe 13th, 14th in 3-point percentage in the league right now. So I just don't trust San Antonio's 3-point shooting. And don't get me wrong, 13th, 14th, that's about middle of the pack. But if you look back on the last, about 15 NBA champions, all of them, most of them, over 90, probably like 95, 96% of them have all been at least top 10 in 3-point percentage. So I just throw that out to people because I've seen a lot of people say the Spurs are going to get to the finals or they're going to win the title. And the most obvious things, the things you noted, right? Like no playoff experience, can Victor's, body stand up, withstand. I just go back to the team in totality. Like they can't shoot. And in the playoffs, we know, like you said, the possessions are longer, right? The defenses are a lot, way more scheme. I can just look at you for the next week and a half and know who I'm guarding, right? So
Yeah,
I'm just very straight with it. I don't play the fences, man. I'll shoot it to you straight. I'm always gonna keep it a buck. And on my pod, I'm like this too. I just say it straight up. But yeah, who would you have in the series?
I think so. My biggest worry for Denver is what do they look like after Minnesota? Because I think whether or not they beat Minnesota, if they beat them, they're going to come into this series probably a little hobbled because Minnesota plays very physical. I would have to say, considering the seeding, right? Spurs 2 seed, Nuggets 3 seed. I think if the Nuggets are going to win, they're going to have to win in 6. And I think it's definitely possible because, like you said, the Spurs, and like I said, the Spurs are very inexperienced. If the Nuggets come in and they take game 1, all they have to do to position themselves for a good game 6 is you can lose game 2 in San Antonio, but then you win game 3 and 4 in Denver. You might drop game 5 in San Antonio. You can come back and win in Denver in game 6. And that's kind of been the Nuggets formula for winning playoff games. Outside of that, I think it was that one series against, oh man, I can't remember who it was. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, maybe versus the Clippers, where they just could not win a game at home. It made no sense. But besides the point, the Nuggets really thrive at home. They're going to try to capitalize on that. And the best way to do that is steal one of the first 2 games, which I think that they absolutely could do.
You think they can? So I'll say this. I'll kind of throw it at you a little bit too. So within that Denver, Minnesota series, right? And you got the Spurs playing Portland. I would say that I for sure think Denver is going to beat Minnesota because I think Minnesota's a stagnant team and they're less of themselves than they were last year. And this is just, again, another thing I stated this back in December. I said Minnesota is a stagnant team, and I got blowback for it, which is fine. I don't really care. I think something this summer is going to have to give in Minnesota. I think most likely they're going to get rid of their coach. But that's another conversation for another day. But I think Denver playing Minnesota, their playoff starts against Minnesota, right? The Spurs playoff don't start against Portland. So I think San Antonio does get punched in the mouth. And I think it's probably, I ain't gonna say likely, but if I was a betting man, like I feel like taking Denver in that first game at San Antonio is I think that's a money winner right there, right? Because
that's how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like San Antonio's not gonna really. And mind you, like I said, I live in Portland. So I've seen the Blazers play. Portland's a good defensive team. Offensively, it's a hit or miss. Last night, their threes were dropping. So they looked a lot better than what they have for most of the year offensively. But I just don't think that Portland series is going to prep the Spurs for that second round. I just don't. I don't think so. And honestly, they better hope, and obviously knock on wood, they better hope Wemby don't get hurt in that first round. That's what they better hope. Because he obviously, like I said, he's 7'4", 7'5". So injuries are –
and Klingon –
it's going to happen.
Klingon is a unit, man. He has got a ton of strength. I think if the Blazers are going to try to learn anything, a friend of mine, I'll give him a quick shout out, Colin Hatfield, did a great breakdown of the Phoenix Suns and Los Angeles Lakers, their game plan against Wemby, which is basically just get under him and constantly put physical pressure on his midsection, whether that's throwing double teams or denying him low post opportunities. If you go and look at this Portland Trailblazers lineup, like they have a lot of guys with strong, big bodies that they can continuously throw at San Antonio. I do think the Spurs will dispatch of them quickly just because I do think the 3 guards can take care of business, but it's not going to be like a Pistons versus, it would be like an OKC versus Warriors series, if that makes sense. Like they'll win in 5, but those 3 or 4 games in that 5-game series will be really tough to win. Reminds me, sorry to rant about this, but it reminds me a lot of the Boston Celtics versus the Orlando Magic last year. Celtics won in 5, but walking out of that series, they looked completely disheveled and hobbled. And that's why I kind of think they lost to the Knicks last year. I mean, now, of course, Tatum tore his Achilles, but by the time that happened, it looked like the series was already over with in the first place. So playing physical teams early is really dangerous.
Let's get to our disappointments, because I could tell, I could see passion from you. I seen the passion from you when we got down that road, so we can revisit it. Did you want to keep talking about Minnesota, or do you want to go to some other ones?
So with Minnesota, I'll touch on them briefly, and then I'll hop to another team briefly. Just the Timberwolves' lack of getting a point guard. True, like I actually think with a point guard, the Timberwolves could have not only gone back to the Western Conference Finals, but had the most competitive opportunity against the Oklahoma City Thunder out of any other team in the West. But because you're asking Anthony Edwards to distribute the basketball, there are some advanced statistics out there. There's only 52 players that have the ball in their hands in the NBA remotely close to Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is 47th out of those 52 when passing the basketball, specifically passing the basketball. He's an atrocious playmaker. Unbelievable scorer, top 5 player in the NBA. That should tell you just how good he is at everything else. But the fact that they didn't go and do that just ruined another year that Ant could have gone on another deep playoff run. But I'll hop into most of my disappointments have to do with injury, quote unquote, injured teams. But I'll start with the Houston Rockets. When I was coming into the season, I don't know about you, I thought Ime Udoka was a top 5 coach in the league. The way that he coaches defense and the way that he's able to get his guys to play as hard as humanly possible. You saw that team versus the Rockets last year, or versus the Warriors last year. The thing that I'm now noticing is a refusal to adapt. And that's what I'm really bothered by. Like that series versus the Warriors last year, that's a 2 seed versus a 7 seed. And they lost. Like obviously that Warriors team has so much playoff experience, and that's a young team. We've talked about the importance of that. That's one thing. But then to come into this season, you grab Kevin Durant, Fred VanVleet, unfortunately, it was his Achilles, right? Tears his Achilles.
Yeah. I believe it was his Achilles.
Yeah. So you then lose your point guard that facilitates the offense, especially late in games. And then throughout the entire season, the fourth quarter just looks the exact same every single time. You put Kevin Durant at the logo with the basketball, he gets a double thrown at him. And Kevin Durant, in my opinion, is at minimum a top 15 player of all time. But he has never had to be, in his entire career, the player that sits at the top of the key to run in offense. If you want him to get a bucket, start him in the high post. But that's not what Ime Udoka and this Rockets team is asking him to do. They're asking him to be a combination of like Michael Jordan and Draymond Green. Like they want him to distribute the basketball like Draymond Green, but also score like Michael Jordan. And that's just not who Kevin Durant is. Then, of course, you've got all the young guys that have just really like Amin Thompson, unbelievable athlete, top 10 wing defender in the league, but cannot shoot the basketball. He is great underneath the rim, but late in games when you pack the paint, he's not really that useful on the offensive end. Reed Shepherd, I think too much weight has been put on him in the opportunities that he's gotten. And then Alperen Sengun is basically the exact same player that we saw from last year. I'm just not even a little, I'm very disappointed in the lack of growth from this Houston Rockets team.
Hey, that's funny you brought up the Rockets was one of the teams on here for me too. And I mean, you already summed it up. You summed up everything that pretty much I was going to say, but I'll just say this about Houston. I would say I think a majority of us basketball fans, I think a lot of us had Houston in our championship bubble to some extent, right?
100%.
Just drop Kevin Durant on there. And even when VanVleet went out, I think I still felt like, okay, they lost VanVleet, which will cause some offensive hurdles, but this team still should be ultra competitive. I think what really messed them up is that their three-point shooting really cooled off the second half of the year. They started off blazing. They were first in the NBA three-point shooting. They were shooting like 42, 43% all the way up until like January. And then from January all the way to today, I think they finished. So overall they finished, I think 10th, but from January 1st to today, they're like 24th, 25th in three-point shooting. High turnover team. They're like, I think 24th, 25th in turnovers. And that could be obviously attributed to their offensive, not having a real playmaker. And Amin Thompson's a really good playmaker, but he can't shoot, right? So
right.
off rip, that shrinks your offense, right? Shrinking your offense, right? Allowing the defense to be sucked in. 3-point shooting's ice cold. Kevin Durant's almost 40. Ime Udoka, not an offensive coach, gives us what we got today. So
my thoughts exactly.
Yeah. So I just think that's where we're at with that. I'll go to the next team. Another team for me, and it's probably for you, I would assume, maybe the Pacers. The Pacers for me, I thought even without Halliburton, I thought at least they could be a play-in team. I did not expect them to fall off a cliff the way they did. I think a majority of it is injuries because with injuries, if I remember correctly, I think they were either first or second in the NBA in like total injuries for the season. Portland, the Blazers were third. So just to throw that out there. But yeah, I think the Pacers had either the first or second most injuries in all the NBA. So that obviously played a major role. But even early in the year, like I didn't expect them to fall off a cliff the way they did. So that was somewhat disappointing. I thought that was kind of disappointing to me. What are your thoughts? Was the Pacers a team for you or no?
So actually the Pacers weren't a team, and it was because probably about a quarter to halfway through the season, I kind of realized that there definitely injuries played a part in this, but it was more of by design that this was a tank to me. And it was disappointing that you have a team that goes to the finals that immediately flips the tank. But I kind of like the strategy. I know a lot of people are pretty taboo about tanking. I think that relatively speaking, with a lot of context, like it works in some instances. This has got to be the riskiest tank job that I've ever seen with the Ivica Zubac trade. Because if they don't get a top 4 pick, they just traded their number 3 scorer and a potential franchise cornerstone for Ivica Zubac, right? Now, if they get that pick back, if it lands top 4, we're talking about the Pacers have gotten away with a fleece because they got a better version of Miles Turner and a top 4 pick, and in my opinion, one of the most loaded draft classes in NBA history. So I wouldn't say the Pacers are they're not on my surprising teams, but they're on a category of teams of I approve of their season strategy, if that makes sense.
No, that's fair. That's fair. They were just disappointed to me just because coming into the year, I was like,
yeah,
okay, I think this team probably could be a play-in team. Nembhard looked like he was going to take a leap. Looked like Mathurin was going to be able to take a leap. I'm like, okay, you still got Siakam. You still got a lot of that depth. You guys should be able to get at least to the play-in, So that's where my disappointment was. But same thing with you. Like it got to a point in the year, I would say within the first 20 games, where I'm like, oh yeah, they're tanking. And I get it. And they should tank, to be honest, because to me, and I got a lot of blowback last year for it, I felt that Tyrese Halliburton couldn't be your best player on a championship team, even though they got to the finals. I get it. But I said this before the finals, even during the finals and after the finals. Again, I told you, bro, I'm very
straightforward.
Right? Yeah. I don't play around. So they were stagnant to me, even though they got to the game 7. And some say they would have won it if he didn't get hurt. I don't believe that. I still think OKC would have beat them. But that's besides the point. We'll never know. But I felt like that was a stagnant team. So give a chance, right? Like you said, they're rolling the dice.
They're rolling the dice. Yeah.
If they can land top 4, it may pan out, right? Now they potentially got their guy. The player for me that I have been on the record to say that I really like for them is Caleb Wilson. If they can get Caleb Wilson, that's a championship team. I like that. Bona fide championship team. If they can get, because they don't need offense. The team needs defense. And Caleb Wilson is, I don't know, like I said, I don't know how much college you watch, but I watch a lot of college and been following a lot of these kids since they were seniors and juniors in high school. And Caleb Wilson, one of those kids. Caleb Wilson is the guy that they need in Indiana. They don't need AJ. They don't need DP. I mean, don't get me wrong. Tyrese Halliburton and DP would be cool, but they don't need DP. I think they need Caleb Wilson. And then imagine in the fast break, Caleb Wilson and Halliburton in the fast break.
Right.
Come on, man.
That's real.
It would be great, man. Another team that I had for my disappointments was a team you hinted on earlier, the Orlando Magic. I thought Orlando, my preseason, I had them finishing top 4. I thought that was going to happen. I was like, okay.
Me too.
Paulo's 23-24. We're going to see him and Franz go to the next step. This core, they've been to the playoffs a couple times now. I'm like, okay, this is the year. They solidify themselves as a top 4 team. Paolo may or may not be first or second team all NBA. He may put himself on top 5 MVP ballot. Like, I was pretty high on him in particular coming into this year. And injury played a part, but also, like you said, locker room stuff, egos, not liking coaching styles, or maybe, Jamal Mosley may have said something to him in particular. They disappointed me this year. And it sucks. It sucks. I was really high on this team, and I'm not necessarily falling off the cliff with them necessarily, because they're still a young team. And this was correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't this year 1 with Desmond Bane? Isn't this year 1?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so I think they'll be fine long term, but just got to get over this Jamal Mosley thing. And I don't know if some players may end up getting moved too. I don't know the situation, right? I don't know if it's just a Mosley thing, or is it Mosley talking super highly about other players and, dogging Paolo. And then those players are also like, yeah, we try to tell you, Paolo. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if it's just the coach removal, or is it players that need to be removed as well. What are your thoughts on Orlando?
So Orlando is also on my list of disappointments, and kind of like Houston, and another team that I have on this list that we'll get to in just a little bit. Injuries really played a large factor in the Magic season being disappointing. Basically, if I had to boil it down to like 3 or 4 sentences, Franz Wagner got hurt. The Magic had to put more weight on Paolo Banchero. They put too much pressure on him. He tried to do things that are not in his repertoire, like in his bag, like trying to shot create for himself. And that just led to a disastrous start to the season. Now we get to the end here. The Magic have kind of started to get healthy, but the coaching staff, I think, had a lot of misdirection in the strategies throughout the seasons that the players just were not buying into. There's tons of reports that basically Jamal Mosley is a dead man walking, and that there was a report that said regardless of what happens in the playoffs, he's gone. And I just think that is this reminds me a lot of the Mike Malone situation from last year, right? They fired him with 5 games left in the season, and it blew my mind. But then you hear all the reports of what was going on behind the scenes, and then you start to understand this is a power struggle. I think Jamal Mosley lost his power struggle as soon as this series is over in the first round. Or maybe, honestly, we don't know yet because they play tonight. They might not even make the playoffs if they lose this play-in game as of this recording to the 76ers, and then maybe lose to the Hornets next time. That would just be a real capital D in disappointment if that happens.
Yeah, and it always bleeds through the walls, right? Like, things always show themselves. So yes. I'm interested to see what comes actually out. What information we get? I personally have Orlando winning tonight. I think they're going to get through. I think they're going to get through this.
Me too. With no Embiid too. I think so too.
I think Orlando. And it's weird because the odds has Philadelphia by 1.5, and I'm just like.
That just goes to show how bad it is in Orlando, right? You basically have a fully healthy roster going up against a team with no Joel Embiid, and you're an underdog. Like that just shows you how much of how in shambles this Magic team really is.
No, it really does. That's funny. Everything you said, that's so funny. Do you want to do another disappointment, or are you ready to talk about teams that surprised you?
I'll touch briefly on this disappointment, and then I'll bounce it right into the surprising team. 76ers, of course, very disappointing season, but they're just like the Los Angeles Clippers. It's every single year. Well, if the 76ers are healthy, they're a finals contender. Well, that has been one of the biggest ifs in the NBA in the last literal decade, right? We have not seen a healthy Joel Embiid playoff run since he lost to that Kawhi Leonard buzzer beater against the Raptors back in 2019, I believe it was. So where does the 76ers team go from here? You've got Maxey. Paul George is playing out of his mind right now off the drug suspension, which I'm just baffled by where this 76ers team is at right now. But yeah, we're not at another impasse here where it's a freak. I mean, this isn't even an injury. Joel Embiid suffering from an appendectomy. Like, what kind of crazy scenario are we living in where one of the best playoff players in the league is having appendicitis right before the playoffs start? So 76ers, of course, disappointing. they just cannot keep a healthy roster, even though if fully healthy, I would say is a top three roster in the league. Maybe you've got a 30 point per game scorer at center. You've got a 3-and-D small forward that can average 20. You've got a point guard that's rising in his ability to score the basketball. You've got a great rookie, and then you have a bunch of other really talented supplemental pieces. If somehow they can pull off a miracle, get to the playoffs, and get completely healthy and surprise either the Pistons or the 76ers, they could make a run, but they're not going to. Like you said, shoot it straight. Let's be honest. The 76ers are not going on a run. But to bounce it into teams that have surprised me, the Atlanta Hawks have really surprised me, especially after the Trae Young trade. I thought that they don't own their own pick, so I didn't think they were going into full tank mode, but I did not think they were going to take trying to make the playoffs seriously, and they've done the exact opposite. They've been one of the best teams since the All-Star break record-wise. Now, do I think that they can beat the Knicks in a playoff series? Probably not. But the fact that they're already here at this point getting playoff experience is unbelievably surprising to me. What do you think about the Hawks this season?
Yeah, Atlanta's a good pick. I think Atlanta for me is kind of similar to what you said. I felt like after they lost Trae Young, I was like, okay, maybe they're just, maybe just going to punt on, not necessarily punt on the year, but I didn't expect them to be necessarily where they are. I didn't expect them to be that high up. But that kind of is a testament to the coaching staff, to Jalen Johnson, to them trusting their product, right? At the end of the day, this team trusted their players and what they were seeing in their facilities. So, yeah, they were a super team. And I'm kind of happy you brought them up, too, because they weren't a team I had. But they were a team that I would say surprised in the essence of where they finished for me, because I could still see them in the play-in. So for them to be even beyond that, kind of really the second half of the year, they had didn't they go like 20-2 at a point, or they had some crazy stretch.
It was a crazy stretch, right? That I think it was something along the lines of like 16-4 or something like that. But yeah, they went on a nuts run, kind of like the Hornets as well.
So it's going to be interesting too, because like you said, their pick this year, they'll get a good pick this year. But then next year, their pick goes to San Antonio. And then the year after that, I think it may go to one more other team after that. Or no, the year after that, they get it's really messy after that. So This year, they'll get a good pick. They will get a good pick because they get the best of New Orleans and the Bucks pick this year. So they're going to get they need offense. They need an offensive engine. I mocked them. I had one of the guards coming out, going to them. I thought Kingston Flemings was a good a good player for them. Just depending where they land. If they land higher, then obviously I would put somebody else there. But just where they were, I did this back in, I think it was March or February. It was February, where I kind of took the time to kind of pick draft fits for teams. And Flemings was the player for them because at that time they were mocked to have the, I think, 6th or 7th pick. And I was like, okay, I liked Flemings for them. And this was before March Madness. Now my big board's kind of moved a little bit. So, but yeah, I think they need that alpha lead guard for them. I like Alexander Walker. I like Daniels, but I don't like them being the engine for my team. I don't. And Jalen Johnson, long-term, he needs a guard. He needs a guard that he can depend on. If they could somehow land a top 3 pick, which is possible, because I know they're getting ready to change the lottery odds. If they can land a top 3 pick and get DP, oh man, Jalen Johnson and DP would be box office in my opinion. So, but the Hornets, we're going to go to this Hornets thing because I had the Hornets in my plan coming into the year, and I had the Blazers. So I want to hear where did you have the Hornets coming into the year? I want to hear this.
Okay, so I basically, as an Alabama guy myself, was never really a big believer in Brandon Miller. I didn't think he could be – I thought he could be a volume scorer. If I had to put a comp on him, I thought he would be a Brandon Ingram, right? He wants to – and I think now he's kind of elevating into that Paul George level of potential. And that –
that's his idol.
Yeah, that's his GOAT. That's his GOAT. So Brandon Miller has played above expectations. LaMelo Ball, before this season, had not played winning basketball since high school. I was a big LaMelo doubter, and that was wrong for me. And then last but not least, I actually had a friend of mine text me all the way back at the beginning of the season saying Con Knippel is going to win Rookie of the Year. And I don't know what it is. Maybe I just doubt, white guys in the lottery. But I'm like, dude, come on. There's no way this guy is going to be an actual like star. And man, has he proved me wrong. So those three guys combining for like 11 plus threes per game that's what's really skyrocketed them to this point. Now, last night was a disappointment for Con, but the rest of this team really stepped up, right? This team is probably the most like the highest vibes in a locker room that you see on an NBA team. I just didn't see that coming because of the history of the Charlotte Hornets. But tell me what you were high on about the Hornets this year.
Yeah. I'll go back to the summer. I'm a Duke fan. I don't think I got to tell you that, brother. Okay. So I'm a Duke fan in college basketball. So I got to watch Con, was blessed enough to watch him live in their game. We played Kansas last year in Vegas. I was blessed enough to go to that game, so I got to watch them up close. But I'll tell you why I was high on the Hornets, and I'll say what I said last summer. I believed when I looked at that Hornets roster and they added Con, I love that they drafted Sion James. I love that they drafted Ryan Coltbrenner. I said that I believe the Hornets had at least 5 guys on that team that could drop 20 in a blink of an eye. So I felt like they were going to outscore teams. And again, this was on the record. I said this, right? And I was like, well, I think they're going to outscore teams. LaMelo also last summer had a procedure on his ankles. He's been having ankle problems.
Yes. Kind of like Stephen Curry did at the beginning of his career.
So I was like, okay. So he gets that surgery. I like their draft. And I believe that they had at least 5. I believe they had 5 guys on that team that would give me 20 in a blink of an eye. So I was like, oh, they're about to outscore teams. So that's where I was coming from. Also, I like Charles Lee as their head coach. Joe Mazzulla coming from
Celtics
that coach,
guy, that
tree. I liked him. And so that's where I was at with the Hornets. I was like, oh, they're going to be in the play-in. I had them as a play-in team. And then similarly with the Blazers, I liked the makeup of the Blazers roster. I believe that they could be a top 10 defensive team this year. Not quite. I don't know what they ended up finishing this year. I know the last 15 games, Portland has been first in defensive efficiency, defensive rating. They've been first the last 15 games. I don't know where they finished, but I think they finished like 13th or 12th or something. But yeah, with the Hornets, man, I love their offense. I was like, I'm sold on the offense. You didn't answer my question though. Where did you have the Hornets coming into the year? Were they
I had them as a bottom 5 team in the East. I thought this is yet another season where the Hornets are going to be in the lottery. They're not going to be competitive at all. This is going to be another tank season. LaMelo Ball's probably on the move, and they're going to try to reorganize their core around Brandon Miller. And I guess maybe I thought Con Knippel could be like the Robin to his Batman, but at the same time, still to this day, I guess I'm still a Hornets hater. I don't see anybody as the guy.
Yeah, to kind of answer your question about, you were saying they don't have the guy, right? The guy to take them there, right?
Yeah.
Give me the ball, take me home. I'll give you an example of what I kind of am putting this team. I'm putting the Charlotte Hornets in the same bucket as a team from the 90s/late 80s. And you tell me what you think about this. To me, they're the East in the modern day version of Run TMC.
Yes, absolutely. That is a phenomenal comp. And think about Chris Mullin, great. Kind of like a Brandon Miller, Mitch Richmond, kind of like a LaMelo Ball. And then, who was the last one?
Tim Hardaway.
Yeah, Tim Hardaway. Maybe Mitch Richmond is Con Knippel and Tim Hardaway is LaMelo, because LaMelo and him are kind of polarizing players. But great comp. Absolutely.
I think that's what I see when I see the Hornets. I'm like, this is the second coming of Run TMC. So they're not going to have a defining guy that you're hoping for. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they have that moment. Maybe they have that moment where Brandon Miller, Con, or even LaMelo, maybe they say, I'm that dude. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like they give me a Run TMC feel. LaMelo is the franchise guy, right?
Yes.
But the play style is very Run TMC. So that's where I'm at with the Hornets. So, and like I said, I like their draft, and they're a young team, and they did a good job with the vets, right? Like they added some vets on that team. Miles Bridges, even though he's been there that whole time, he's a vet now. Miles Bridges is what, 27, 28?
Yeah, he's been there
He's a vet.
he's been there for
That's
like
a vet,
7, 8
right?
years
Grant
now. Yeah.
Williams. Grant Williams is a vet. He's a vet now, right? I don't know if Taj Gibson is still on the bench.
I don't
know
think
if he
so.
still is.
As a
But
matter
they
of
have
fact,
some
I
vets
definitely
on that bench, right?
Yeah, they definitely do.
Josh Green's not a vet, but he's not a vet. But they have, I think, a few other players where I liked the vet presence on that team too. So that's also why I had them in the playoffs. Or at least the play-in. I had them in the play-in. So that was somebody, and that was a team that I'm just surprised that you were disappointed in them. Or like not disappointed that they were a surpriser for you. But also I get it, right? Like that's something that I love to do, in my opinion, is like when I get to a point, like during the summer, like no BS, and me and you, we're for sure going to come on in the summer. But in the summer, that's when I do my greatest work, is when there's no games going on and I'm just looking and digesting teams. Like that's when I do my greatest work, because I'm looking at these rosters. I'm like, okay, do I believe this? Do I believe that? And I just take a lot of scenarios into account. So Charlotte was, like I said, Charlotte and Portland were those two teams for me this summer where I looked at them and I was like, okay, it's time for them to do it, right? It's time for them to flip. And the year before that, I did it with Detroit, but I did not trust myself with that. So I didn't have Detroit as a team that I had taken a leap, but they took the leap. And then I beat myself over the head where I was like, dang, I have some teams for next year that I'm thinking right now, but I'm not ready to put them on the record.
Okay.
Maybe I'll tell
enough.
you off the record. We could talk about it, but
sure thing.
Were there any other surprises? Were there any other teams that surprised you?
Not necessarily surprising. There's just a lot of teams where you can kind of see where like their trajectories, right? We all can acknowledge like the Warriors are on the very bottom end of the mountain coming off of winning 4 championships, right? The Spurs are a team that really elevated above what I expected, but at the same time, I sit there and think it makes sense how they got here, right? They're littered with talent. I will say one of my worst on the record takes is that I thought the Spurs should trade Stephon Castle. Not because I didn't think he was good, but because I thought that backcourt was too loaded, and I thought that Dylan Harper would be better, and he still might be. But that to give Dylan Harper the minutes he needed, you had to get Stephon Castle off the team. Dead wrong about that. I was mentioning it the other night. They run, this is so funny. You were talking about this comparison to Run TMC. They run that same system that the Phoenix Suns were running back in like 2015 with Goran Dragic, Isaiah Thomas, and Eric Bledsoe, if you remember that. They've got that trio guard lineup. The difference is they also have potentially maybe the greatest center of all time playing down low, like maybe the best rim protector we've ever seen. So the Spurs definitely played above my expectations. I had them as like the 7 seed, but being a confident 7 seed, right? Like 48 wins and a dominant play-in win, and then you compete with a 2 seed. They're the 2 seed in the West. And I think they won, 62, 63 games. So I think they won like 62 games. Yeah. And I didn't have them winning 60 games either, but I did have them like you, right? About 7 seed, 8 seed. No, I think I had them about 7. I think 7th or 6th seed. But I did have Mitch Johnson on my Coach of the Year ballot coming into the year because I believed I like him as a coach. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I think he potentially can win Coach of the Year. And then I think it was like November. I think it was about December, early January. I came on the record and I have a short of it where I said Keldon Johnson to me should be getting looks for as 6th man of the year. Yep.
So it didn't get much buzz. I didn't get much buzz off of it, but that's just what I felt. I'm like, bro, Keldon Johnson's giving you 14 off the bench, 15 off the bench. Like what are we doing here? Why is he not being talked about? So he might win it, actually, as I think about it. He might. I think
he's the odds-on favorite now. Yeah,
he is. He wasn't somebody I had in my preseason, though. I won't claim that. But during the season, I was like, early in the year, I was like, okay, this guy should be getting heavy looks. But for me, also, the Spurs was a team that I put on my surprises because they won 60 games.
Yeah, I will say that's surprising.
The 60 games thing threw me off this year with the Spurs in Detroit. And another team for me was Phoenix. I had Phoenix as a lottery team. I didn't have them winning 45 games. They won 45 and obviously lost to Portland, but they'll have another game. They'll have another game, another chance to get in.
Yeah.
But I did not have them winning 45 games because I didn't like the makeup of the roster. I felt like the young guys were young guys and none of them had much offensive potential to them. I like Common Malawach, came to Duke, but I felt like he's raw. I still think he's raw. Rasheer Flemings. I like Rasheer Fleming coming out of the draft. I thought he was drafted way too late as well. I was surprised he went into the second round. But I just didn't like the makeup of their roster. And I was like, Book gets hurt. Jalen Green's known to be hurt, which was truth. But they surprised me. So I want to give them some love. And you don't bet against a billionaire, right? Matt Ishbia, you don't bet against a billionaire. He shut me up. So I wanted to give them some love. What were your thoughts? Did you have another team or did you want to talk about Phoenix?
I'd love to talk about Phoenix. I think that was all the teams that I had as big surprises. Phoenix to me is such an interesting team. They're like in the very similar conversation that I put with Portland in the sense that they really overachieved this year, according to my expectations. But I just wonder where they go in the future with this, right? That's kind of where I'm at in my mindset. Cause I don't like, even if they, beat the Clippers or the Warriors, whoever gets into this play-in matchup, they're matching up against OKC. That's a 4, maybe 5 game series, in my opinion, if I'm just shooting it straight. Going into next season, Devin Booker, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, you got a lot of other young guys around them. What piece did they – but here's the thing. They don't have any cap space, so you can't go sign big free agents. They don't have great lottery picks because they traded them all away multiple times for Kevin Durant and I think Bradley Beal as well. So where's their future at? I don't necessarily know, but I do like that regardless of that, Matt Ishbia, like you said, he's got quite the ego and he refuses to lose basketball games. So he put a lot of pressure on this front office and this coaching staff to put together a competent roster to win games, and they did exactly that. So I got to give my props where props is due for sure.
Yeah, and again, back to Matt Ishbia, right? He betted on one of his good friends. The head coach for Phoenix was his roommate at Michigan State. Yeah. So big shout out to him to know, have faith in his friend, to trust what his friend was showing him and telling him. And so I like I said, I've never seen anything like it. But big shout out to Matt Ishbia. But like you said, right, where do they go from here? No draft picks. Cap space is locked. Truth be told, this team is kind of banking and hoping for Rasheer Fleming to hopefully become Kawhi Leonard, or they're hoping that Common Malawach develops into being something major. That's kind of where they're at. I think Jalen Green's still young enough to where he still has another floor to go because Jalen Green's what, 24, 25?
24. Yeah, 24 right now.
Yeah, so he's just entering his prime. So Jalen Green's, I hope for Phoenix's case, he's not done maxing out.
Yeah, he's got one more level of development that he can get to.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. So we'll see if he does it or not. I personally was not high on Jalen, wasn't high on him in Houston. So we'll see. Being in Phoenix, having his family. I know he had a kid, I think, last year. So this would be, his first year in Phoenix. Maybe next year, have another offseason with Book. Will take off. So I think Phoenix is probably banking on some of their young players to answer your question, is what I'm guessing. Because Book's not going to get better. He's done. I think he's reached. Yeah,
he's like in the middle of his prime. He is exactly who he's going.
I think he's done. So they're hoping, I think, for Green, Malawach, maybe Kobe Brea, but I feel like Kobe Brea is kind of just a 3-point specialist. Yeah. And Rasheer Flemings, I think. Oh, and they obviously got Ryan Dunn, but I don't know how much offensive upside he really got. I don't like his shooting mechanics. Don't care for that. Defensively, very solid. Solid. I think they're just banking on their young guys, which is luckily for them. All the young guys are 24 and under. So they got a runway. So I hope they do get in the playoffs too, because I think it's important for young teams to touch the playoffs as early as possible so they can refine and know what to work on in their game.
OKC is in a perfect vacuum where I don't think it's unreasonable to think that they can win 4 to 5 more championships in the next 10 years. Just because right now what they have better than anybody else is they have the core of their trio. They have Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and SGA locked up for the next 4 years. After that, they will probably, with all of their draft picks, be able to develop more guys to potentially replace J-Dub or Chet. And if that's the case, then you just have SGA in his prime for the next 10 years. Like right now, he's 26, he'll be 36. And think about the longevity of players now. Stephen Curry is averaging 25 a game on 45, 40, and 90, right? And he's 38 years old right now. Kevin Durant is 39. LeBron is 41. There's a lot more players playing at high-end basketball later into the careers than we've seen before. I think SGA is somebody who really takes the game seriously, invests in his body, loves the organization, and is tied with them financially for a very long time. And that's really all you need right now. So I'm going to say 4. I'm going to say 4 in 10 years, including like if they win, I'm talking about this season, they win one and then 3 more in the next 9 seasons. You see what I'm saying?
So in total, you think they'll win 5 with this big 3 in total?
So the one from last year, this year, and then 3 more. So 5 total, which I think is consider in the last, 7 years, we've had 7 different champions. This is not the era of a dynasty, but I think we're moving into that.
You think we're going back to the dynasty era?
Yes.
Okay, I hear you. And what I'll tell you this, because history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. I tell people this time in the NBA, this is the 70s. If you look at the 70s and who won during the 70s, it was, I think, like 6 or 7 different teams won. I think the only team that won 2 in the 70s, don't quote me on this, but I believe it was the Knicks. I believe the Knicks won twice in the 70s.
Yeah, and I think the Celtics won twice, but every other champion was a different champion.
Yeah.
Outside of that, yeah.
So I think you're on to something. I think you are on to something for sure. So you're saying 5. I have them. They win this year, that'll be 2. I think they probably win. I think they win 2 more.
Yeah.
I'd probably say 2 more.
Total. That's totally.
Yeah. I think they'll win probably
ballpark.
2 more because I'm taking into account the teams that are coming up. And God forbid if Wemby's healthy.
Yeah.
And we know what burns in his body when it comes to Chet.
Yeah, and competition, man. He wants it.
Oh, man. If Wemby's healthy, man, you got him, not to mention the draft that's coming in. Who knows where those kids are going to end up? If those kids end up on a team that's already made, I think you're onto something like that. But outside of that, man, do you have anything else you want to tell the people where they can find you at one more time and just kind of send it off?
Search me up at Plaisant. It's in the bottom left here. I'll spell it out for anybody who's not like watching, but just listening. It's PLIZONT. I do NBA, college football, NFL content, pretty much as much as I can do it 365 days a year. So be sure to give me a follow. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity. This has been an absolute pleasure, man. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. And for sure, like I told you guys, he's for sure. I'm going to have him come back on for sure. No doubt. Hopefully I can come on his too. So I appreciate you guys for taking the time to watch my podcast. I'm your host, PJ, and PJ's out.